IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Stream over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand. For a free 7-day trial and for a limited time, get 50% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES50. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW. IT Pro TV's courses now include a Sierra Update, Let's Encrypt, ITIL SOA, and ITIL PPO. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You would pay $85.70 a month or $857 per year, but we have a special offer for our listeners. For a limited time only, get 50% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. So make sure you go to, let's see, let me get it right. It's on this, isn't it? No, it's not. It's virtually.
It's behind you.
It's virtually there. That's just a virtual thing. itpro.tv/enterprise security. ES50 is the discount code for that. So that's a really cool, that's an awesome steep discount from IT Pro TV. So make sure you check them out. Configuration management. This is my first kind of foray into configuration management was we were managing like 100 or so Solaris systems when I worked for the university, and we had this tool called CF Engine, which some of you have heard me talk about CF Engine on the show before. It's actually still a thing. I think there's actually a commercial product. It used to be this like conglomeration of Perl scripts that would let you go change configuration across your enterprise. They've since, it looks like, morphed into a commercial product. In any case, they do have a free offering. That was my first kind of experience with configuration management, because I was walking into a larger environment than I'd ever seen, and I was like, so, like, how do I add my SSH key to like 100 systems? Oh, that's really cool. And so obviously it's morphed since then. And of course, you know, cloud has taken that to exponentially new levels. John, I don't know if you have stories to share about configuration management, maybe ways in which you've broken configuration management.
Well, let's talk about it. Like, if anybody's running product X, it doesn't really impact us. Like, if somebody's like, we're using this particular product and, you know, we're not going to cower in fear. But if you go into an organization and they're like, yeah, we have a really good configuration management board, we need to make sure that we open up the windows for the testing over these specific times, those organizations tend to be very difficult to get into because they've gotten used to watching their organization and, more importantly, understanding what is normal in their environment. So if you're looking at, you know, trying to move forward with computer security, getting started with computer security, a solid configuration management program is right there at the absolute tippy top.
I mean, it really backs up like the heart and soul of what I wanted to cover in this segment, John, and that is, if you do something like configuration management well, like security is like a natural byproduct from that, which I think is really important. I also want to talk about Daniel Miesler's post that I saw on Facebook. And he said, you know, you probably don't need zero-day defenses, threat intelligence, or AI-powered SOCs. You probably just need like more basics like asset management, patching, DNS hygiene. some of those basic fundamentals like we've talked about, I'd lump configuration management in there as well, right? I mean, this is like the basics of it. And as you said, John, organizations that do it well, they're harder to get into. And I think that speaks volumes to how you want to approach your security program. I got a couple of tips in there. I'll start with the first one. And I think having goals is really important, not just for this project or really any project in your organization, even outside of security. But in this case, I think a lot of people will come and say, well, what's the standard? Or that's the next point, sorry. So having goals helps you focus on solving the problem of, I need to manage my configuration. I want to make sure that stuff is the same. As security, I like to go in and say, how can we help you do that better, right? I'm not going in and saying, I created this standard for Windows systems, and you have to go make all these changes in your system. That's really probably never going to work. What you want to do is focus on helping and say, hey, we could work together, come up with this really great system for managing configuration, and not even talk about security. You're just making their jobs easier. Now you're going to have happier systems administrators, or maybe slightly less grumpy systems administrators, and security is just going to be a byproduct of that. Because then you can go in and say, hey, there's a great change. You know, it'll help improve the security and resiliency of our systems. You've already helped them build the infrastructure and gotten them on this thinking. So I think that's really important, because I think every IT administrator, whether they know it or want, really wants awesome configuration management just for the convenience of their job. So I think this is it should be an easy sell in your organization, as far as I'm concerned.
The hardest part is though there's not a lot of shiny products that you can buy that'll do this for you.
Yeah,
I think
a lot of it's manual, right? Like, a lot of people do this without. And one of my other points was it's a homegrown tool that does it, right?
Usually it is, and I think it's funny. It's kind of like telling people that are trying to lose weight, well, what you got to do is eat less and work out more. Like, screw that. I got a pill. I'm going to take that instead.
Right.
And configuration management is that kind of exercise and that constant practice that needs to be put in place. And that's a hard sell for some organizations. It's much easier to purchase a product.
Yeah, and I advise people to create their own standard too. I think there's tons of guidelines and hardening guides and compliance regulations, but ultimately you need to sit down and determine what the problem is, what your goals are, and then determine how you're going to configure and ultimately harden your systems. You know, I think about the networking team when I worked at the university, for example. When I first started, you know, there was a lot of telnet and there wasn't a whole lot of management, but we had to sit down and say, okay, how do we want to solve this this problem? How do we want to manage the configurations? How do we want to manage authentication and authorization for all of these systems? And I went in and I helped them overcome that problem of having to remember all the passwords and being kind of a messy process for authenticating to all the devices and then managing the configuration. Improving that process greatly, just in and of itself, improved the security overall of all of those systems. And I didn't go to them and say, well, you know, this standard for this regulation says we have to implement, you know, TACACS, right? Like, that's not going to work. Not going to work. Develop your own standard. So,
well, you know what? It's kind of funny. It's that whole thing of the journey, right? By developing your own standard, developing your own baselines, developing your own configuration management, how you approach it, you learn your network. And we've seen organizations that buy products like, you know, use Tanium or Carbon Black, and they're trying to monitor absolutely everything and, you know, basically get snapshots and everything. And they're still ineffective because at the end of the day, they don't have the ability to differentiate between a false positive and a real attack or some type of misconfiguration and how that got there, because they never understood at their core what their network and what their operating systems, what their application stacks were actually looking like. They were trying to purchase that understanding, and it only comes from hard work.
Well, and a great thing too is, you know, as a security person, I would, going back to my university and networking examples, I'm like, security guy, I'm telling myself, we really shouldn't have the RIP routing protocol anywhere. Like, that's just bad. That's just bad. And what happened was when they got some configuration management, they were able to identify, after, you know, some convincing, like, we really shouldn't be using this protocol. They're like, yeah, I know, it's just kind of like out there. And they're like, okay, well, now we have configuration control over everything. You know, there's these systems over there and they're still running. Oh, let's go turn that off. And just like by nature of having that visibility having a plan, magically RIP just disappeared from the network. And it posed a significant threat to uptime too, right? If someone takes advantage of it, the network would go down. And that's the worst thing in their world, right? Is the network going down. And so magically, now that we had this configuration and in auditing, they were able to turn it off, and the network got more resilient. So, I think that's a good story to speak to your point, John. Mm-hmm. And really, configuration management, I look at it as either part of or an extension of vulnerability management. It's very similar. It's successful when you customize it. Like we said, a lot of people build their own tools for this, or a lot of people build their own tools for vulnerability management as well. Maybe not the actual scanning piece, but to manage the entire process, it's typically a custom tool because everyone is so different. And you basically need to develop a baseline, detect those variations, fix them, and repeat the process. That's like basically vulnerability management, except the vulnerability is not a software patch, it's a configuration. And I think they're equally as important in your overall security strategy. And I think they should be treated with the similar processes. And sometimes the risk rating is kind of similar, right? Missing patch could be the same thing as RIP running on your network, right? I mean, that's bad. So I think, and also how some of those things are configured as well, which kind of speaks to prioritization. And we talked about, John, those 5 or 6 things you can do in a Windows Active Directory domain, most of which, I think all of which basically speak to authentication and authorization. By changing those configurations, you're greatly improving the security of your network. So identifying those things, treating them like basically a missing patch, and then being able to detect them in your environment, being able to fix them, and then keep tabs to make sure it doesn't come back, right? That's a huge part of vulnerability management, making sure someone doesn't roll back a patch and leave something vulnerable. That's incredibly important in configuration management, as is prioritizing, because it's, you and I both know, John, it's so easy to get overwhelmed in this process. I mean, you go read some of these hardening guides or guides from the manufacturer of your software or hardware device, if they developed a guide, like it's basically every single configuration option, and it should be this to be more secure. And you get overwhelmed and hung up in the details. You got to identify and prioritize, talk to your security people, figure out what poses the most risk and focus on that. Again, I think those 5 or 6 things in Active Directory are important.
Very true.
Anything? So I want to ask you, John, you've encountered customers that are doing configuration management very well.
Yeah, and they're without question the tougher customers to get into. I mean, and they're also the customers that gravitated to behavioral analytics in their SIM. They're customers that do regular vulnerability scans. They're the ones that are actively trying to know their network as good as they possibly can. And yeah, it's without question one of the biggest indicators of a successful organization with a successful security program.
Yeah, it's kind of like your pen test definitely tests your configuration management, right? Because in some of the examples we gave, if that one system isn't configured right in terms of how it's handling authentication, storing hashes, or whatever the case may be, that's the one system that the pen tester is going to focus on. And I think that's one of the huge benefits to configuration management is you find that stuff before an evil attacker does. So exactly. Other tools, John? I know you said the tool space was kind of short here. Of course, we have Puppet and Chef. And those kind of tools, which again speak a little more to the cloud, but they can be used. Ansible.
I put Ansible.
CF Engine was one. Tripwire actually messages very heavily on the configuration management front as well.
It's weird. We used to see Tripwire in a lot of places, a lot of conferences, and met a lot of the sales engineers and just a bunch of techs. And they're a great company. I just haven't seen much from them recently. I don't know if they're kind of going downhill or what the deal is. But yeah, they were always a really good product for this configuration management perspective.
Fantastic. Well, don't forget to determine your goals and set your own standards before you start go looking for a product. John, thank you very much for appearing on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see everyone next time.